Thank you guys for coming back to another episode of Cobra TV, and we've got an exciting guest. We have Burned from Egosoft. If you don't know who that is, think X Series, and he's here today to talk about the X4 Foundations that he's just released. Burned, how you doing, bud?
Hi, thank you. Fine.
We call each other like Cobros here on the channel because everybody's a bro, and I overuse the word bro when I comment. Reply to comments like, thanks bro, hey bro, how you doing bro? So everyone was like, let's name the community Cobros. So a lot of the Cobros have been messaging me your game and asking me to cover it, and I've just recently started looking into it, and it looks absolutely amazing. And so the it's called X4 Foundations, but the X series has been around for a long time. And let's go. I want to go ahead and just real quick learn the history of Egosoft. Where are you guys from? What did you work on before X series? And then kind of lead up to the X series.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's a long story. That's why I have to be quick, because the X games is already more than 20 years. X Beyond the Frontiers was released in 1999. So yeah, if I go into detail about every game, then this alone can fill hours. But the company is even older. Egosoft started in 1990 actually as a company, and the first game we made even before that. So, but all of the stuff we did before the X series was really just released in Germany. There was we were really small at the time. That was really just at the beginning. Friend of mine plus me, 2 people working on what we wanted to do back then on the Commodore Amiga, and later then also PC games, and to get some adventure games mostly that we did financed. We also had to do all kinds of advertisement games. That was back at the time a little bit like today's mobile games, like small projects you could still handle. And and we always wanted to do something bigger and larger, and obviously also dreamed of having it successful internationally. So, and yeah, it took quite a number of years. I think in 1996, roundabout with Windows 95. At the time, we also started working on this space game again. The idea for that was already existing before that, even on the Amiga, but that was with the rise of 3D accelerators for Windows. We actually started working on that more seriously again, and then that turned into X Beyond the Frontier. The game came out in 1999, and fortunately, kind of, our publisher back then here in Germany was bought by THQ, and THQ was wise enough to say, okay, we try that game also in some other markets, and released it in Europe at least. We then also had a bit of a delay with the US, because the game had to go through some other channels to the US only a couple of years later. So we had a bit of a slow start in the US, but that all changed only many years later then with X2 and X3 Reunion, when those games were then brought to Steam, which really is of course nowadays the by far biggest platform for us, and where most of our games are. And so there were of course sequels. Extension was like an add-on to X Beyond the Frontier, and then the first sequel was X2 The Threat, which came out in 2003. And then X3 Reunion in 2005, and relatively short after that already, we started developing kind of like a space game from scratch again, because we wanted to do some things entirely different. And this later turned into what we now call X Rebirth, which was deliberately not X4. Because we wanted to simplify some things, because these X games became a little bit more complex and more complicated, especially than we wanted them to be, or especially new players had a bit of a problem getting into those games. And so we wanted to make something more simple, at least for the start, to solve a couple of problems that we saw in space games in general, but in particular in our series. So That was the development of X Rebirth, and even while we were working on that, we released 2 more X3 games during that time. That was X3 Terran Conflict and X3 Albion Prelude, and actually these 2 ironically became the most successful in the whole series afterwards. Okay. So X3 and is kind of 3 games which are also bundled together in different boxes and versions, but that's the core of it. And X Rebirth, as I said, was a bit of a step back, a more simpler game with, for example, you could only fly a single ship, and we reduced a little bit of the features. But actually, I haven't even started talking about the features of the old series, so maybe I should do that if you.
Please do. Yes.
The X series at the beginning is really the space simulation core. You get into a ship, you can trade, you can fight, you can explore the universe. That's what even the very oldest of those games was all about. It was a little bit inspired by Elite, indeed, a game where you can be also everything. It's here's the universe, and you can do in that universe what you want. That's right. Kind of the X spirit. But with every sequel and every add-on after that, we added more possibilities, more freedom, more things you could do. For example, build your own stations, have many more than just one ship, operate entire fleets of ships, then have your own capital ships and operate them from all kinds of different perspectives. Like X2 already had the ability to sit personally also in the cockpit or on the bridge of a capital ship, and so forth. It was really enormously deep and a lot of features. So the players it attracts are really from all over the place. There are people that want to trade primarily, because that's also the core strength of the series, that we have this realistically simulated economy, and that attracts clearly people that want to become empire manager and mogul with large economy background. But it also has mission and a tendency for wars and fights. So people who are coming more from the Chris Roberts inspired games like Wing Commander that want a mission told in a game. Those we try to cater as well. So it's the open sandbox, but combined with a story and combined with action and missions. So that we really want to give people a universe and allow them to do in that universe whatever they want. They can be a good guy, they can be a bad guy. It has dynamic reputation systems and all of that. And different people play the game in very different ways. That's kind of the essence of it.
Okay, so you went from you created X4 to kind of take everything that you've done prior to that and just cram everything that you possibly can into one game, right?
The idea is to bring those two things together, really. I mean, as I said, the development of X Rebirth started already in 2007, and then after really a long and very complicated development, it was released in 2013. And it had problems with our fans, because clearly some of those people have these expectations that all of the things are possible in the game, and you cannot take away something. That's something that is hard to sell to fans if you have fewer features than you had before.
Right.
So that's the reason why it wasn't called X4, of course, but it's still hard marketing-wise what exactly X Rebirth was. But it was also a new technology platform and a different user interface, an attempt to make the game more easy to get into and control differently. So X4 is now, again, 5 years later, and it is really, what it does is it brings together those two goals, the feature set of X3 and the technology of X Rebirth, really. And it's not just a new graphic engine, it's an entirely new game engine, but it has all of the possibilities that people expect from an X game, and an X3 game in particular, that you can fly all ships, and you can build and operate your own stations. You can mine asteroid fields. There's this deep, complex economy underneath, where nothing is really faked and everything is actually simulated, like especially on the economy level, where NPCs in that universe are trading with each other. And so that is really what makes an X game. That sometimes it's actually already interesting to just observe the universe, and not even like when you just join the game and you are just that tiny pilot with one ship, but you have that huge universe, and your influence on the universe is of course small. Then it might look like completely, pretty much a waste of to try to simulate all of that universe when your influence on it is really small at the beginning. But it's, even on that level, it's already pretty cool to see that, say, if you destroy an individual ship there, one transporter, or just something tiny in the big sense, you can already see that the effects it has are real. That, for example, if it was transporting some goods to another station, that the price for the wares it is bringing there are actually going up now. And then, of course, the deeper you go into that game, and the more influence you gain, because you have now not just one ship, but hundreds of ships. You have not small ships, but big capital ships for transportation. Or you build not one station, but whole many stations, and actually produce goods yourself, and your economic influence on the universe can grow. Your war, you can actually start your own wars or whatever, I mean, all of those things are influences on the universe, and it's very fascinating then to see those dynamic effects. And yeah, that's kind of what.
So pretty much, if I wanted to play as a pirate, I could that's my gameplay. Like, I could just get in there and upgrade my ship and just keep going to where I'm an efficient pirate, and then I take from others, and then I sell it to other space stations. Or if I wanted to just be a trader, where I did everything on the books, just go buy, sell for the high, to the highest bidder, and or I could can you do smuggling in the game, pick up certain things and do some illegal smuggling?
Absolutely, yeah. That was actually a focus in X4 to improve that as well. I mean, this was in theory always possible. It was just not very rewarding in some of the predecessors. So it was always a focus. As I said, you can do everything, but the question is, it's a balancing question in the end. What is rewarded by the game the most? And clearly, the goal with smuggling and any kind of illegal activities is always that they should pay more, but it should come at a risk.
Right.
And that's a deliberate balancing, kind of hard to get exactly right, especially with the reputation system that's also completely dynamic. You have a set of I think now about 10 different factions. We have originally these races, but some of them split up into different even enemy factions now. So you can have good relations with one faction and be peaceful to them, but still rob another one, and so you are. It's not even black and white on that level. So you could actually make good money by robbing ships of a particular faction and then just selling their stuff to somebody else. Anything is possible, but it's a careful balancing to get that the risk and the reward in a healthy balance.
Very good. It sounds like you could stay pretty busy, playing the role that you want to play. Is there a lore in X4 to learn? Is there like an ongoing universal story of do you learn of what's going on? Can you get involved in what's going on? Is there anything like that in the game?
There is a very large background fiction from the predecessor games, and also from the books written in that universe. There's a whole series of books written which are loosely based on the events in the book in the games. So the very first game, X Beyond the Frontier, told the story of mankind kind of finding the X universe, or what we call the X universe. So it started literally with the moon landing and picking up the player of where you are today, and then telling the future kind of. And part of that future was the discovery of what we call the X universe. There's some interesting backstory there of how that again is related to mankind, and there's all that's our solar system always plays a special role in that universe. But all of that is not, you don't have to know clearly. And when you start X4, we are assuming that you don't, and then you can. One thing you do is you discover while you play the game what we call data vaults, little data storages that we hide around the universe, which then unlock cutscenes of those past events and tell you a little bit about that backstory of the game, which goes back hundreds of years. But the game does not have a huge plot yet. It does have a plot. Actually, some people haven't really discovered it yet because there's some missions pretty well hidden, and you have to do some kind of scanning activity to find some of them. And the main plot of the game is one of those. So we are not forcing it on you. You don't have to play that. But if you do, then it leads you to a special installation. We call it the player headquarters. And there's this Boron scientist. Boron is one of the alien races in the game, and you find him. He needs your help. You help him. You get to something we call player headquarters, and this unlocks research. So, an ability to get some special technologies in the game that you cannot get otherwise. And but this is not a huge lore, so to say. We definitely have plans to build up on that more in the future. So right now it's a huge sandbox, and it has this background lore and story where it's really heavy on. But the plot, the missions in the game are more designed to be sandbox because there's also missions that you play for very different factions. For example, there are wars going on in the universe, and we wanted to especially focus on the dynamic. The property of that universe, that it is so dynamic. You have factions that are battling each other, and depending on the state of the war going on between those factions, you can actually participate in that by playing missions for them. If you become friend with a faction, they invite you to join their military, and then you get missions from that. So something like that.
See, there's a sandbox like your game lore. There's a fine balance. Like just enough. I'm usually happy with just enough that gives me a sense of being, a sense of why things are the way they are. That kind of defines my position in the universe. So it doesn't need to be for me. I mean, other people might be different, but for me, it doesn't need to be like a strong story narrative. Just picking up little hints. You go to a space station and some NPC tells you something that. About the past of where he came from, and it kind of slowly starts building a narrative for why things are the way they are in the universe. I think that's a perfect balance for my taste. But like I said, people might be different. They might want strong lore being told, big giant cutscenes, and just a big narrative. But I think just a little pinch of it, just to give you a sense of being, is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the game. Our strength is definitely not to have huge cutscenes and epic storytelling.
Right.
The game now, especially with X4 more than ever before, is based on different perspectives and different takes on that same universe. You can right from the start of the game, you can start with different people. You can actually play different races even. So having a linear plot where with that one epic hero and his and cutscenes and so forth would kind of contradict that anyway.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we cannot have story-driven missions that tell an interesting story and go much deeper than what we are currently doing. And we definitely plan to do that more in the future. As you say, there are very different types of players. Some don't need that at all, and some want that very much. So we try to make everybody happy, but we have to set priorities. But the basis is always this sandbox and the ability of all of those gameplay activities you can do inside of that game, and then having then a story on top of that you are not forced to play, but invited to play, doesn't hurt.
Right. Very true. It seems like we talk about space games a lot on the live show, where I have callers they're allowed to call in and talk about whatever subject matter they want to talk about. And what gets brought up a lot is that there's no real game out there that, like, there's no space game out there that has everything that everybody wants. Like, we all like Elite Dangerous, but there's things that we would like to be put in Elite Dangerous that just aren't going to be there. And such as space legs. I get beat up every time I bring up space legs. Like, it's not about walking. You're not supposed to walk. It's a simulator. Like, I know, but I just want to walk. You just, leave me alone. It's what I want. And then you've got, like Space Engineers is another one of my favorite games. And it has the procedural planets on it, but it's not as beautiful as No Man's Sky, and No Man's Sky, everybody here knows that it is my favorite game of all time. It was at launch, and it still is today. And they have blown my mind at how they have just turned the game around and turned around basic public opinion about the game. Like, it's the best comeback fight I've ever seen in the gaming industry. But going to my point here is that it must be hard to be a developer to make a space game where it's a universe and you've got all these possibilities, and then people just keep asking and wanting this and wanting that, and it's got to be hard as a developer to try and make all those people happy. And like, I see a lot of people wanting procedural planets in your game. So it's got to be difficult. What are, like, how do you tackle some of that? Like, the planets. So do you guys have plans for the planets in the game in the future? But how do you tackle trying to balance and making people happy? Because it seems like that's what you're trying to do. It seems like with X4, you're trying to make the perfect space game, and because it's got I got this little checklist, and your game has almost everything checked off for its perfect space game, and one of those things that I find myself doing, like, why not planets? I mean, I'm guilty for wanting more, but how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that is absolutely true what you're saying. This is exactly the problem. I mean, when we started development when immediately after we released, at the latest point, immediately after we released X Beyond the Frontier,
yes,
and we got feedback for the game, there was always this almost infinite wish list of what you could add on top of it. And for us, this already started before we released the game, because we ourselves, I mean, I'm talking about everybody here in the company, because everybody here is really involved in the design of the game as well, wanted to do more. We knew, of course, this is about an open universe, and there are so many things we could add. And that it's not just about those big things like planet landing or doing it all multiplayer or space legs, as you call it, which we also didn't have for until X4, of course. X Rebirth did show it as if you could walk around, but it wasn't completely true. And now only with X4 you have this seamless transition between ships and stations, which you negatively call space legs if you are a fan of especially the Elite Dangerous players seem to see that as a negative. I don't know why it's a religious question for people. I mean, if you don't force anybody to do it, but anyway, it's true. We want to do more and more, and it also includes lots of smaller things, not just the planet landing kind of leak, where of course that's not something you can add in a patch quickly. But yes, even planet landings we discussed already a long time ago, and it became something like a running gag always, that whenever we have our discussions here internally, like what are the features we are going to add for the next patch, what are the features we are going to work on for the next expansion, there's always people that say planet landings, and yeah, sure, it's if you do that, then you have to do it right. And planets are, of course it's possible. Of course, it would be nice, but it comes at a price. You have to then, just like that same argument is, of course, also true for the ability to walk between ships and walk on stations. But I always wanted to have that, really, because it's just we are giving people the idea that there are NPCs, people that they are true and that they are actually doing something for you from the very first game. It's not like we didn't want to do that. It's always just that we couldn't really afford to show them so realistically and actually have them walk in and out of ships and have crew that walks around and does things. And now we can, and of course it was a huge development effort, but this is, I think, where we pick our priorities, that we want to first have the universe to be realistic and it can be with and still be fun. I mean, realism is not the highest goal for that reason, because sometimes if you go too far with realism, it may counter the fun part, when it's about physical correctness. There are some things where it kind of gets in the way of gameplay, and then you have to make compromises. But otherwise, I mean, atmosphere is definitely important, and therefore walking around and seeing your ships from the outside and standing on a space station and after landing, getting out of a small ship, walking over to a larger one and climbing up a ladder, that just makes it so much more believable. I always wanted that. And I think if you then also have the ability to just quickly teleport from one ship to the other, then there is nothing negative about space lags. It's super cool for, I think, a large part of people, and those people who don't like it, well, they don't have to do it. It's that's our solution.
Right. Totally agree. Difficult thing on your table, man. It's I admire you. I really do. Could you maybe elaborate? Like, what's some of the most important things that you're planning on trying to add to the game to try and appease people, or not just appease people, but to please yourself? Because this is your game. You're, a love, a passion, and I'm sure you want to add everything that you can possibly into it. But what are your priorities? Like, what's more important to you at the moment? Well, we actually released a list of our plans for at least the next half year. Okay.
A while ago for the major updates. We just this week released 2.0, which and this is only obviously, like the number suggests, it's a big major update to the game, but there's more coming. That's why we made this outlook on 2.20, 2.50, and 3.0, and each of those updates will have some major milestones. Like 2.0 had the ability to build your own shipyards, and therefore then indirectly your own ships, which wasn't possible before. Mm-hmm. And then one of the next updates will introduce a completely new ship class, which is basically the ability to repair and equip ships from carrier ships. More and more of these kind of things with the leads to then the expansions, because all of that is for free, and this is how we kind of draw a line between free updates and the paid. The paid expansions are adding content, so new universe sectors, systems, and new races actually, and also of course more ship variations. So that's what people pay for with the expansions, and there is one already work in progress for this year or later this year at some point. We don't know. I don't want to give an exact date yet, but that's definitely our plan. And but even before that, we will be at version 3.0 probably.
Very good.
Gameplay improvements.
Well, so you with X4, it still has that more streamlined, like user friendly, like because sometimes these games could be full of giant menus and you don't know which to click or what you're doing when you first log in, and you've kind of like made that simpler for X4. Yeah,
and that is definitely. Again, I mean, every aspect of the game you can pick. I can always say, yes, we are really proud of what we've done so far. We think this is great the way it is, but there's a lot we want to do more, because exactly with the menus and user interfaces, this was one of the big improvements between X3 and X4, that we completely redesigned the entire user interface, made it a lot more easy. We have now this map interface that is completely 3D, where you can basically control fleets by point and click with your mouse cursor, zoom into a universe which is completely with fog of war. So if you have 10 ships flying around in the universe, you see what they are currently seeing. Their scanner range is all simulated on that map. So that's a really essential part of the new game, and basically combines the older X game now with almost like an TS kind of game, where you can control lots of units by point and click. So that is what we want to build up on then also in the future. Better, even further improve the user interface, and that's definitely also something that was not perfect on release, is the tutorials to some of those things. We want to improve further, that people actually see how those menus work right, without actually having to first make. And sometimes that's it's just because it's so big, there's always more to do.
Right, yeah. So someone who's not familiar to the X series, when they see the trailer and they're like, ooh, this looks amazing, I would love to buy this game and be a trader, just trade goods, or someone who mines and then trades. But they're not familiar with the X series, so they buy the game, they download it. Is it pretty apparent, like, how to achieve that goal for someone who's not familiar with the X series, when they have that frame of mind that I want to be a trader, and they get this game? Is it easy for them to get into that, an experienced person to get into that trading?
Yeah, that is definitely the goal, and it shouldn't make any difference if you are experienced with the X games or not, because the X4 does thing differently than the X3 games, and also differently from X Rebirth. You can see that as a positive, and you can also see that as a negative. Some of our fans see that as a negative, understandably, because it's always hard if you have to learn something new and overcome some habits or something you got used to with the previous games. But it allowed us more freedom in redesigning the user interface and making things more intuitive. And I think the game is get into almost all activities, but sometimes it requires some time, and that's partially deliberate, because of course you will not immediately be able to build a station just by starting the game, but it shouldn't require reading a 100-page manual to do so either. The game has a set of tutorials, but they are optional. You don't have to do them. You start the game, you fly, you should be able to just walk around, get into your ship, sit down and fly. That was definitely an important goal, and I think we achieved that. Of course, you can never say for everybody. Of course, some people will stumble and may have a problem steering, but I think 90% of the players can actually. Even people who are completely unexperienced with space games in general should be able to just sit down in a ship and fly it. Then the very advanced or the more advanced activities will sometimes have those moments where you scratch your head. Like, for example, one good example is the first time you want to build a station. You will have the ability to design the entire station from modules on the map. So that is relatively sophisticated. You will have to find out that you can unlock what we call blueprints, and blueprints then are listed in categories. For example, there are production modules, storage modules for wares, docks, and so forth, functional modules of stations, and you use them like Lego bricks and connect them together. So Sometimes something as sophisticated like that may require for some players to just have a look at the manual and see how those menus work, or where to find some information. Or even a simpler activity, a good example for that might be docking. I don't know if you played X4. Did you already try docking on a platform?
Docking's difficult, but that's what I want, right? I don't like. Yeah. I mean, I do like games that are simple, but I also like games that make it feel like, hey, you're driving a big piece of equipment and it can break. You better be careful. I like that.
It is about striking a balance between those two things. You want it, you don't want it to be unnecessarily sophisticated, where people have to hit hundreds of buttons unnecessarily. But on the other hand, you also don't want it to be unrealistically simple, where you just fly into the station and it must beep, and it goes beep, and you are docked already. So what we did is, when you actually fly near a dock, you get this.
It's like a mini game.
Yes, it's basically a little mini game, and
I love it.
For us, it was very interesting to watch the first YouTubers and that didn't know the game at all, and watch them live try that for the first time, and it's different. I mean, for some people it takes only seconds, and they immediately understand everything, and we go, yeah, we did it great, and then we see the next streamer, and he fails for like 5 minutes before he figures it out, but I think that's totally acceptable. I mean, this is.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, that's a golden spot. It's Elite Dangerous is pretty hard to dock in. Everybody who's watched me play that, they know I can't really dock in Elite Dangerous very well with pizzazz. But I like the balance that you've got. It's like this little mini game where you make everything green, line it up, and then you go down. It's not entirely too easy, but it's not entirely too difficult either. It's a good balance.
I hope that we strike that balance. Yeah, I think in that case, we, of course, then in addition to that comes then the question of automation. That's also something that I think is pretty unique in the X games, or at least not completely unique. I'm sure there are other games, but they don't have then also all of that first person content, where people, after owning dozens of ships, hundreds of ships, large fleets, they want to be able to automate things. And for example, with docking, we allow people to do that more and more easily with upgrades to their ships. So there's a docking computer that makes it increasingly easy to dock. And later you also research the technology to teleport yourself into ships directly. So if you like, you don't have to walk at all anymore. So that is, by the way, also one of the bigger things that distinguishes X4 from the predecessors. That with teleportation fits very nicely with the ability to empire through the map, because it allows us to bring the player directly to wherever the action is. Like, you have ships spread out over the universe, and some are doing exploration, some other transporters are currently trading for you maybe, and then there is a pirate attacking one of your freighters somewhere else, and you can, once you researched it, teleport to that freighter yourself and pick up the fight yourself. So you jump into the action, and you have that much higher and higher density of events, of action happening all over the universe.
So you mentioned building the space stations. What's the motivation for someone to build a space station? Like, what's the gameplay for that?
Well, first of all, most importantly, it's economic impact. You can those stations are factories. They produce wares. As I said, the universe is based on that realistically simulated economy, which means all the wares. It's basically like a pyramid of goods. At the bottom, you have resources, which are usually mined from asteroids, silicon, ore, and so forth, and also some gases. And then these are refined into intermediate products. Also, there's food and so forth. And then it's towards the top of the pyramid, you have high-tech goods, and those high-tech goods usually go into ships and stations themselves. And of course, the ultimate consumer of all of that are wars, are big fights. Whenever ships are destroyed, whenever stations are destroyed, all of that is basically the end result of the economy underneath. And so all of those goods everywhere in that pyramid are actually manufactured by stations. So you as a player can participate in that at any point. You can actually take over entire branches of the economy of the game and manufacture stuff yourself, or become completely independent of the other NPCs in the economy and make everything yourself from the resources up to your own shipyard. That's of course something that's in the order of magnitude of many hundreds of hours of gameplay. It depends. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody has to do it. That's the thing.
Very awesome. Very awesome. This sounds fun, dude. Yeah, I'm going to definitely play it after this, and maybe I'll throw some B-roll footage of the game up from me playing it. I do have a couple of questions here on Twitter from people that I asked if anybody had questions. There's a few here. And the Isolation says, will we ever get a Boron or Terran DLC?
Very likely.
Okay. All right. And then Hero Bert Concho says, will there be repair machines? This is multi-part, so will there be... We'll take these one by one. Will there be repair machines? He's asking.
Machines? What do you mean? There is the ability to repair anything in, for example, ships are repaired in shipyards, and stations can be repaired with builder ships. It's basically repairing is usually not separated from construction. It's the same process. It's just basically by destroying the hull of something, you are just basically reversing the production process, and you can always build a station as much as you can repair it with the same methods, and that's also true for ships.
Okay, awesome. And then I think I know the answer to this one at the moment, but it says cities on planets.
No, that's as I said, it's a running joke for us. We would love to do it. We would love to do so many things, but it's a question of priorities.
Right, exactly. And maybe in the future, maybe an X5 or X6, you know, when, because with your game, you keep improving each one. There is more and more stuff getting added. So I'm sure that, you know, you guys talk about it a lot, and I'm sure that one day it'll come.
Would be cool, yeah.
Can you board ships as a pirate?
Yeah, of course you can. Boarding is important, and boarding is actually what we use the term boarding for capital ships, because at that point you need not just shoot down a ship and reduce its shield and hull, but you actually have to also start a boarding process, which requires a boarding crew, which means multiple crew that you have on your ship or on another NPC ship that you are controlling. So you can actually board a larger ship with multiple smaller ships as well. And then basically they deploy and fly over with their spacesuits to the other ship and cut open the hull. It's a longer process, and that's all capital ships. But there's also the simpler version of it, of just normally fighting with a small ship and sometimes seeing the pilot of that ship. And then you can actually also go into your spacesuit yourself personally, fly over to the ship, and there would usually be what we call a signal leak on the ship, which is basically the possibility to hack yourself into the security system of that ship and open its door and then get in personally and fly it.
So are you able to get in there and is there any gunplay? Can you shoot the crew on board?
No, you don't. We don't have a first-person shooter yet.
Ooh, I like the yet. I like that.
Yeah, like many things. I'm sorry. That is not on our list for the near future at all. I'm just saying. Of course, it's something you could do, just like you could do planet landings and you could do a large MMO. It's
yeah. That's the thing with these games, man. It's like here's a universe, here's spaceships, and then you I'm guilty. Like I automatically think, but what about this and what about that and what about this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you forget, like, these are guys who are programming a game. It's not everything could be possible, and I think that's why space games can be so controversial. because yes, you could do all these things, but like, can you do all those things in one game? This
is also the reason why we are working on this beast for 23 years now.
Yes, definitely. Wow. He has another question here saying, can you catch alien creatures to sell them? Like kidnapping, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Enslaving crew, kind of. Yeah. There's no. I think there's no. You usually hire crew and they work for you. That's a process that's already supported. You can. That's actually necessary. You have to have crew on all of your ships. Some are pilots and have a defined role. Like there always has to be a pilot on every ship, but there's the option to have additional crew, like the boarding that I just mentioned requires Marines, but there's also simpler crew that just helps in the operation of a ship, that just increases efficiency, if you will. So they are optional, they are not necessary, whereas the pilot is necessary. Slaves are not, we are playing with the idea to integrate that more nicely then as well, but of course as an illegal activity, clearly, and as I said, you would always be free to do that, but you're not forced to do it.
Right. He's got another question here. It says, is time needed to build new stuff? I think what he's talking about is like in games like Boundless, you go to craft something and there's a time limit for it to be crafted. I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah, in the X3 games, it was more instant. When you built a station, you just deployed it, kind of, and it was like a construction kit, and it goes bang, and there's the entire thing. No, in X4, the construction process is very detailed. As I said before, you build the station from lots of little modules, which also has this design aspect, of course. Every station can look very different. You are really building it literally with Lego stones. And then when after you finish the design, you actually can see the construction process for potentially a very long time. It depends on how many modules there are. And you can personally deliver the resources for the construction process. Basically, the design process the design user interface just gives you at the end a list of what resources are needed to build that station. And then either you have those resources already because you brought them before, or you just now have an offer to the universe that, see here, guys, I'm paying this amount of money for those resources. Please bring them to me so that I can build the station. Do it yourself, and you go around and buy the resources, bring them there. But all of those things take time, and once the resources are then there, then the actual construction process starts, and you see little drones flying around, welding, and also that process takes time again. But this is a relatively short period of time. So like one individual module of a station can be usually built in some minutes. Sometimes the larger ones maybe many minutes, like 10, 20 minutes. But it's always proportional to the amount of resources that they need.
I see. That's good. He has one last question here that says, he's asking, can you set trade routes for ships like in Anno games?
You can specify flight paths for any ship always, but this is not a trade route. You can always, like I said, on that map interface, you can always click a ship and send it somewhere, and then you see this as a line, like in an RTS, really. And this can be much more complex by giving orders in the future. You see those, like your ship is currently in that location, and then you see a grayed out line where you want it to be in the future, and you can send it to a station to buy something, then to another station to sell again, then to another ship and attack that. So you would see that gray line going zigzag from station to station to ship, and with a little icon that tells you, okay, and here's the attack. What you cannot do, and I think that's what he's getting at, is making sure that a ship that is automatically trading is still going on a certain path, because that's again about the automation. You can do things manually, like telling a ship exactly buy wares here, sell wares there, and then it will fly exactly where you tell it to. But you can also tell a ship to automatically trade, and you just tell it, okay, here's money, and go around and try to make more money with it. But of course, that is something that requires a much higher skill from the pilot, and we don't want people to just have lots of ships that just make money magically. So that is something that you unlock with skills of NPCs working for you, and which is actually the most precious resource in the game, the experience of pilots. But either way, what he's probably getting at is the ability to blacklist certain sectors. Like we have currently the problem that sometimes these auto traders that are automatically trading, are sometimes going through war sectors and then are being shut down by Xenon, which is one of our alien races. And sectors is actually one of the features that is coming, I think, with 220 or 250. I'm not exactly sure which one it was, but it's work in progress.
Awesome, very awesome. Okay, so we got another question here from You Are Godsmack, Marcel, and he's saying the game looks great, really nice. Is this only PC or also console? And we know it's PC right now, but do you have, like, what's in the future for console? Anything?
Yeah, it is only PC so far, and we have thought about it, but so far there are no definite plans. It would be cool. We will look into it. Okay. Right now, the focus for the moment is to improve, as I said, these features that we have outlined up to 3.0 and probably even beyond, and also the expansions of the game with new races. The first one will be the split. People were asking about Terrans and were asking about Boron. And yes, we are working on more than just the split, obviously. And beyond that, we will see. We would like to bring it to console as well. Sure.
Of course, yeah. His next this is also from the same person, the same Cobro. It says, is there going to be multiplayer?
Multiplayer is hard. I mean, we just introduced a feature called Ventures in December. And that's really, for us, the first time that we tipped our toes into multiplayer territory. Mm-hmm. The games so far were always completely single player, even though we had this community connection. We have a very active online community, but this is more for comparing your achievements with them. So there's rank lists and everything on our website, and now, of course, also with Steam. But what we did now with Ventures is that the game actually turns a little bit into an online game. But it isn't like you are personally flying into other people's universes, because that's a whole different set of features that maybe we will look at in the future, but is currently not on our plan. But instead, it allows you to send NPC ships into other players' universes, kind of like parallel universes. Oh, wow. and invite them to your universe, of course. And this is an optional feature. You turn it on, and then you can have other players' ships flying around in your universe, and your ships flying around in other players' universes, and of course do something meaningful there. For now, we have a relatively small set of those actions, those ventures, and all of them are at the moment peaceful. So for now, this is basically just exploration, and for exploration, they give you some rewards.
Oh, so it's not like Clash of Clans where you could just send NPCs to somebody else's base and just attack.
Not yet. But that is clearly something that would be possible with that technology. This is in beta. Everybody who plays the game can just simply turn it on. It's not a closed beta or something. It's there. Everybody can try it out. All it requires is an account on egosoft.com, and you just enter your username in the game. And we haven't promised it before the game was released, because we didn't want people to have any wrong expectations with what a multiplayer or online mode in an X game would be. So we just didn't talk about it at all, and then just released it. And now people can try it out, and it's in beta, and we will add features to this while we go.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good, man. Sounds good. And so that's your plan for right now, to kind of flesh that out. So you guys really aren't talking about like an open universe of multiplayer people just flying around. Not just yet, right?
Not just yet. Yeah.
Okay. He's got one final question here that says, is the game more based on flying ships or playing with your character? I think we know the answer to that, but maybe you can explain to him the balance of... I think that's more like a question, because I know you are Godsmack. He likes Elite, but I think he doesn't like the fact that he can't get out of his ship like me.
And it amounts to the question of who are you? You are a person, and you as a person can go from one ship to another. Go now may sound bad to him, but you can also just simply teleport from one ship to another. It's still true that you are a person, and that's why, but I said before, you are not a defined only one person. It's not like you are that one hero in that one specific role. No, you can actually start in different races even, and with different characters. But when you then play the game, you at the beginning you have one ship. You sit down in that ship, and then from that moment on, you are that ship kind of. But of course, once you gain more experience and you get more money and you have more ships, then you teleport around and you are in different ships. So you will always be that one person, but managing an entire empire and many ships.
So to add on to that a little bit, because I think I know what he's asking. You can get out of your ship. You can walk around. The footage that I've seen, like the conveyor belts that you have in these space stations, where because these space stations are huge, and to get around quickly, you got these really fast moving conveyor belts that you could jump down on and get around. There's stores and stuff in there, so there's a lot to do. So yeah,
correct, but let me also add that's really not enforced on the player, all of that. I mean, that is the thing that I think Elite Dangerous players are always criticizing, is if you are forced to walk around on a station and even with a conveyor belt to get to a shop. Right. First of all, you also, in addition to the conveyor belts, you have these kind of instant teleporters which bring you to those same locations quicker. It's like an elevator system. Everywhere where you can dock a ship, there's usually this little elevator. You go into it, press a button, and it brings up a user interface, and you can usually go to the most important locations on a station directly, instantly. And also, these shops on stations are a relatively small part of the gameplay. It isn't like, this is not the normal trading. Something you have to understand, there is basically two levels of trading in the game. One is what we call inventory trading, and the other is the real trading, the wares. Wares are large amounts and are economically important. That's the part that I was talking about before. Everything in that universe is realistically produced and refined into higher goods, and ultimately leads to the production of ships and stations. These are wares. Wares go into the storage of a ship, and you can trade with wares personally, but always directly from a menu. You don't have to walk ever to do that. Even completely from the map by sending ships remotely, and in that case you also never walk. What the walking is involved more in the inventory part of the game, where it's about little things that you kind of put in your pocket, because those inventory items are more important for missions, for special things, and so this is not about the economy. This is more about exploration and special events in the game.
So I think what you're trying to say is that for people who like Elite, you could kind of play this like Elite, and people like me, I want to get out of my ship. I don't want to teleport. I'll probably use it, to be honest, but I would like to walk. I would like to get out of my ship, stretch my legs, walk around the space station, check it out, look at it, and but you're saying that it's a balance for people that do and don't want that.
Well, as I said, of course, we want to present the stations as nicely as possible. And we definitely intend to add more also in the future in what you can do on stations. Right. Like, for example, offering more missions. There's when we watched the videos of people playing the game after release, we actually saw that a lot of the people who had no idea what X4 was about, the very first thing they did is they walked on stations and talked to NPCs, asking them for missions. Kind of, they were expecting. there. And that's something we really didn't think of well enough before. I mean, there's lots of ways to get missions in the game. You can find them near stations on what we call signal leaks. It's kind of like hacking on stations, and sometimes you find these illegal things that way. And there's also basically like a BBS system where people broadcast, here I have a mission, and sometimes you even find ships that do that. But just simply asking people for missions, that's another thing, and that's also on our to-do list for the future, to add more of that on stations. But again, it isn't, like you said, we don't want to force that on people. It is this is the whole mission gameplay content is, of course, always you decide how much of it you want to do. It's not what is, I think the negative side of walking on stations is when it becomes repetitive. And that would be if you would have to do it for trading, like you want to make money with trading. So every time I trade with one ship, you would have to walk on a station, would mean I would have to walk constantly. And that is a negative thing. So we want to have it where it helps tell a story in a mission, for example, but we don't want to have it where it becomes repetitive.
I see. The next one on the list is from Durgan, and he says, what is a feature or features players keep requesting that you refuse to implement, and why? And what do you wish the player base would understand about why you won't implement the features?
So it isn't like that we are not implementing a particular feature out of general principle, that there is nothing like that, at least nothing that springs to mind instantly. But the point with understanding something when they ask for features, that's of course indeed something that I often wish I could get across better, because the whole development process is of course not so transparent. People don't understand what's necessary for some things to happen, and a good example for that is AI problems. Like the price for having a game that is such an open world and that is based on a completely, we call it bottom-up simulation of a universe, is that sometimes unexpected things happen. Actually, all the time, unexpected things happen. This is very different from the top-down approach, where a game is designed around the player, where we know exactly whatever happens here, we are doing it so that the player has a certain experience in the game.
Right.
No, what we do here is we are simulating a universe. In that universe, we have thousands of stations, ships, and all of them operated by basically individual little AI doing things. And then sometimes there's lots of things that we didn't expect. We are surprised by our own game all the time. That's something cool on the one hand, but it's also sometimes leads to things that come across as bugs, and then people asking us, here, this must be a bug. Why are you not fixing this? Okay, one very nice example for that might be people being abducted. There was very very early after the release already a very nice review on Steam where a customer said that he was walking around on a station, and then he just saw another person's ship docked on the station, and he walked into it and took off while he was inside. And now he was caught in that ship. Yes, that can happen, and we did expect that actually, but it's not like we planned anything. This is just, we were aware of that possibility clearly, and we also thought of ways to make it less bad for the player. In his case, he really had bad luck because he was really at the beginning of the game, so he didn't have teleportation yet, for example. With teleportation, it's very easy. You get abducted, you just teleport somewhere else.
Right.
You also didn't have another ship with a pilot yet, because once you have hired your first pilot, you could tell another ship, any ship that you own, to fly to wherever you currently are and pick you up. So he didn't have that option either. So yeah, he was screwed in a way, and that's bad luck. But this guy took it like a champ, and his review was positive, and he said, I'm just standing in the cockpit and looking at that beautiful universe. But that's where there are really two types of customers, you know, the one that says like, no, this is a bug, I'm abducted by a ship. Yeah, but you know, we are working on making it as nice an experience in as we can, but there will always be cases where we are just, you know, I mean, of course we could remove it and just not make that possible at all, but it would be sad. You know, I don't want to take.
I want to be abducted. How cool is that? No, I mean that's awesome. Yeah.
Also, you have save games, right? So you can go back to an earlier save game.
Yeah. So it's not that you're refusing to add features, as some things are probably more important to you than others at the moment, you know?
Yeah,
and, you know, like we keep going around back to the procedural planets. Yes, it's probably on your list of wanting that in your game. Who wouldn't? But at the time being, there's other things that are on the dinner plate that you got to finish first before you could tackle that problem. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, as I said, this is not just true for something as big as with the planets, because doing something like procedural planets with landing and everything included, and as I said, if we want to do it, we would like to do it really good. So it would be something huge. That would be an entirely new game and years of work. And yeah, we would like to do it. I'm not saying we will never do it, but yeah, right. It's always but even with much smaller things like just any cool features that we will and can add to the game, and I have documents where I'm listing just features over features, hundreds of them, and it's always of course a balancing between how much work is it to get it in and what is the benefit, how many people will actually enjoy it, and does it not complicate the game unnecessarily, because that's also a price that you sometimes pay if you add features. So it's always a cost balancing.
Exactly. Well, Bernd, what would you say to somebody who has seen the trailer? They're not an experienced X series gamer. What would you say to that person to get them into one of these ships and start flying around this amazing universe?
Oh, just try it out. I think enjoy the universe, explore. If you are curious, I think this is the right game for you. This is an experience for everybody. As I think that's really what it amounts to. X games are a universe, and not so much just for one type of player, but it should, in the best case, really provide everybody with a playground.
Very awesome. Is there anything that you would like to bring up that we didn't cover before we end this interview?
We could go into technology and everything. No, but I think that's it's perfect like it is. We don't have to.
Awesome. Bernd, it's been amazing having you on the show, dude. And I'm going to play this. And I'm probably going to upload a video and hopefully not embarrass myself when I go to dock.
Looking forward to watching that.
Awesome, Bernd. Again, you're always welcome on the show. If you ever have anything you would like to relay, if you ever have any updates or whatever, just message me saying, hey, I want a spot on the show, and I'll get you right on. No questions asked, no waiting, and we'll just get our time set up, and we'll shoot the show.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you.
All right, Bernd, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope this has been a helpful interview for people who are following the X series or who might see this and be like, X what? This is cool. So thanks, man, and have a good day, buddy.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.